Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and today we're going over the final Z Leader support deck from the anniversary box, which is going to be none other than the Demon King himself, or the Dark King, I guess, depending on how you want to call him, Mechikbura. So I ended up using a different art, the TCG Metals art, because I couldn't find a good image for whatever reason of the Awakened side leader that wasn't like very small dimensional. So yeah, so this support is, I would say, out of all the support, I think we've seen everything in the anniversary box as of the day of me recording this video. I think, not exactly sure. We might get some more tomorrow, but so far we've seen quite a bit. And this was a deck that I have played quite a bit of. I don't want to say I was one of the first people to play, because that's not very true, because I don't know what everybody else plays. I just was one of the only content creators making content about this deck at the time. But I have played this deck numerous times. The problem with this deck, I never felt like, outside of local area play, which this deck, you know, playing this deck around local wise, I know other people who've played this deck in our area, this deck dominates. It's always dominated kind of on a local level, but it's never really felt like it could take that next step to be a higher competitive deck. It just never felt like it could. For a while, the archetype was just very lackluster in what it could do boss monster wise. And then we got some better black secret rares, and then the archetype just still didn't feel as great. Our battle cards really didn't do anything other than warped stuff from like the drop and, you know, the hand sometimes. And then we got the new Shroom and Salsas from, I think, 2 sets ago now. And we got a 1-drop Mechikbura where you can play your boss monster. Still didn't feel like enough. Kind of in an era, Z leaders, bigger battle cards that do more things for, you know, 2 or 3 energy, and we just really didn't have that. Now, this deck has literally everything it needs to be piloted and win events. This deck has everything. Literally everything you could potentially want in a deck. So that's what we're going to go over in this video. So I'm very, very passionate about this deck. I absolutely love Mechikbura. I own, I think, 2 different metal leaders of this leader. I'm a huge fan of this deck. So it is a wish leader in a sense. But we're going to go over the new archetype cards that came out, and then we'll go over the deck, kind of a deck breakdown of this. I will say I spent a lot of time building all of these decks that you guys see in these videos. It probably, you know, a good hour or 2 hours, and then just like theory crafting, and also doing I do a lot of testing on Untap, Undercover, so I play these decks just to get kind of a feel for them, so I make sure that I'm giving you guys correct information. And this deck, I've spent a lot more time kind of crafting. So the first bit of support, which is probably the biggest support, is we did get a Z leader, and this is Time Power Revival Dark King Mechikbura. It's a 2-cost, 2 Z energy cost, 1 black energy. When your life's at 311 and all of your energy is black, and your leader has to be Dark King Mechikbura restored to the throne, which is the leader I just showed you guys. Activate main, you place 1 card from your hand at the bottom of your deck. Choose it to one of your Mechikbura cards, and it costs 8 with 30k power, switch it to active mode, and then play up to 1 battle card with a 5k power or 5 energy cost or less, with the skills negated for the game from your opponent's warp in your battle area. This is very similar to the activate main on your Awakened side, where you tuck a card and you can steal a battle card 4 or less, which is very good, or you can remove all 7 Dragon Balls and get triple attack. So obviously the way you would do this, since you don't actually keep the triple attack on your Z leader, is you would do the minus, you would swing twice, and then on the 3rd you would obviously retain your leader, and then you go into the Z leader, and now you have a 3rd swing, which you already discard 1 card from your hand to draw 2, which is still very good. So you're cycling more cards. So this card alone would have made the deck playable, but then we got more support, which added to that. This card here, Dark King Mechikbura Demon Realm Invasion. For one, this is an 8-cost, 5k combo, 30k battle card, deflect, dual attack. Right there, that is incredible stats for a 2-drop. But then, if your leader is Black Mechikbura and you have 4 more energy, place a card from your hand, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, negate its skill for the game, gain control over it, and switch it to active mode. So this, in a sense, can remove literally any card in the game that does not have barrier. Not only is it removing it, if it is not an ultimate card, which you can remove the ultimates. If it's not an ultimate card, you're now gaining control over it, and you're switching it to active mode. Auto. If your opponent has 4 more cards in the warp when this card is played, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards ignoring barrier, send it to the owner's warp, then your opponent sends 1 card from their hand to the warp. So you're removing 2 things on board, getting another attacker, and removing a card from their hand for 2 energy, and then swinging 3 times. Twice with this and once with the card that you got. I can't tell you how happy I am about this card. This card makes the deck playable in so many. It's not even funny how playable the deck will be now. It's actually incredibly scary for anyone who's never really played against a Mechikbura or played against someone who knows how to pilot the deck. The deck can be incredibly aggro, but also where the deck kind of lacked, I guess, was the late game. You have very telegraphed boss monsters, but with having this guy, which with deflect, and just being able to remove it, things on it's incredible how much value they put into this one little card. So we're gonna go over the deck. Guess I didn't have a screen here at the end. I thought I did. We're gonna go over the deck. I'm gonna show you guys kind of what I'm talking about with this deck. And I'll probably bring up a few pointers at the end that you could potentially put into the deck that I might not have room for in the current main deck. Okay, everybody. So this is a 57 card list. I feel like for those who are kind of stuck with playing 50 card decks, this might not be a deck for you. With Mechikbura, you do need to run higher than 50 cards. The biggest reason is the Dragon Ball to life ratio, and if you end up being lower in deck count, you have a very high chance of having Dragon Balls in your life. Now the caveat to that is that if you're running a 50-51 card deck, if you hit 2 or 3 Dragon Balls, you're probably just going to keep all of them in your hands, and you have a less chance of having those cards in your life. So I understand that, but overall, you don't want that many Dragon Balls in your hand. You might want to start with maybe 2 at the most, 1 for sure. 2 is probably the max. Because since you're a leader on the unawakened side, you search for Dragon Balls from your life or your deck, and you grab 2. You're essentially a draw 2. So why would you want to, lower those chances? The first two turns, you should probably be getting the usage out of that. So that's 4 Dragon Balls, right? And then that's not including the other cards that have the ability of putting Dragon Balls, in your hand or in the drop. So at least 2 swings out of it. Chances of that are very, very low. So the higher deck count, for one, this deck does go through you go through the deck pretty quickly with how much you cycle. So having some more cards is good, especially if you run into a deck that plays mill. But also just that way you just don't deck out. Almost everything in the deck is kind of interactable with each other. So we have the Dragon Ball count. This has not changed since the deck has been released. So 3 Yearning. This is like a 4-star ball essentially. You also can activate it to make your opponent warp a 1-drop. And then you have Empire Strikes Back, which you pitch this and either a Dragon Ball or a Demon God or a Demon Realm race, and then you draw 2 and your opponent warps a battle card from the drop. So this is kind of what you use to cycle your cards. You can cycle the balls, cycle other demons. And once you have all 7, then you are restand 1, draw 1, and then your opponent warps a battle card from the drop area. That's kind of how you awaken. So we'll go into the Self-Awakeners. This is the Ritual at Hand package, I would call it. So we have Salsa and Toa. These are from the original deck that came out in Supreme Rivalry. Both of these cost 1 if you have 2 or more Dragon Balls in the drop. And then when this card's played, you can place up to 2 Dragon Balls from your deck, Dark Dragon Balls from your deck, into your drop area and then shuffle. So you can do up to 2. These both have the ability to, this one, when it's played, your opponent warps a card from hand, and then they draw a card, and then when this card attacks, your opponent warps a battle card from the drop, and then regardless of if they warp one from the drop or not, you get to draw. You can't activate autos on this card for the turn. And then Toa warps a card from your opponent's hand, they draw a card, and then you warp a battle card on board, and this has blocker. So the reason why I'm not maxed out on these cards is once the Dragon Balls are gone, you can no longer play these cards for 1. So once you use your activate main, these cards are gone. In Salsa here, you can only activate this auto once. You can only activate these autos once you swing with 1. You can't activate the top auto or the middle auto anymore. So these 2 cards have sort of lost favor. They've definitely been power crept out. A lot of the time they actually can be used for charging, because a lot of the cards in Sec are very important and you don't want to charge certain cards. So one of the cards that sort of replace these is the 4 of the Dark King Mechikbura, ruler of the Demon Realm. If your leader is this leader, you add 1 Dragon Ball to your hand from your deck, and then you place 1 in the drop. So this card adds 1 to hand, so it's a draw 1, always a draw 1. It gives you cycle ability to look through your deck, and then you put another Dragon Ball into the drop. Then you send this card from the drop to the warp. When your opponent has 3 or more energy, you send a battle card from the drop to the warp, and then you play an 8-drop Mechikbura from your hand or your drop, and that card gains barrier. So obviously there was the 8-drop we already showed off that has dual attacks. You can give that card barrier, or you can give there's another Mechikbura that you can also play off that as well, which we'll go over. The other Self-Awakener, Supreme Kai of Time, Mastermind's Pawn. So this card actually flew up in price back when the support for about 2 sets ago, where this deck got support. It's like a $15, $16 promo. I think it's gone down now. It's kind of the same thing though. You can play it when you have 2 or more Dragon Balls, and then you play the 2 Dragon Balls in the drop. Again, this card's dead after you awaken, after you use your ball effect, so you can't actually end up playing this card anymore for 1. But that's okay. This card will serve its purpose very early on. So it's a 20k, it's a 10k servant essentially. When this card's played, or you gain control over one of your opponent's battle cards, your opponent sends 1 card from their hand to the warp. So why this is good is that this will just warp a card for your opponent's hand. Then if you use your leader effect, or any of your effects to gain control over a card, you will then force them to warp a card from their hand. That's limit 1, so you can't activate multiple of these in a turn. It's only when you gain control over that card. So it's still a very good card. It's not a demon, so you can't pitch it off of your ball effect. But these 2 cards you can pitch off the ball effect here to draw 2. This is definitely a card you're going to want to play. This is probably one of the best. If you don't have the 1-drop here, this is probably the second best one to play turn 1. Then we have the new support that came out 2 sets ago, which were the Violent Majin Assault cards. We have 2 of the Salsa and 4 of the Shroom. So Salsa, 15k crit, you can play it from the drop or your hand. And when this card's played, your opponent warps a card from hand and draws 1. And then it's a 15k crit. This card's good very early, and then later on in the game, it's kind of dead. The best time to play this card is actually you pitch it off of a Dark Empire Strikes Back, so you can draw 2. Then you play this card, you swing, force them to more than likely turn what they can play this. I think opponent needs 2 energy. You need 2 energy, yes. Yeah. So you can play this on your turn too if your opponent went first. You play this, and then your opponent will crit a life generally. They're not going to combo out. And then you can use one of your ball effects to then warp the battle card that you hit off of their life. So you have some very good synergy there. But 2 is fine. Again, this card just came out 2 sets ago and already sort of got power crept by some stuff. So we have 4 Shroom. Shroom is a 1-drop. When it swings, you warp a 7 or less battle card, and then if your opponent has 2 more battle cards in the warp, you draw 1. So it's almost always going to draw you a card. It's just a 1-drop removal that draws you a card, so it's a better version of this Salsa here, which is why we run 4 of it. 3 Mechikbura Dark Ruler, it's a 1-drop, cantrip, draws you a card, and then you can bottom deck one of your Overlord cards, which Supreme Kai is an Overlord, and then also the Goku here. The Goku here is also a servant as well, so you can also use this as well. This is also just a good 1-drop 25k battle card, or it's a 10k combo. So both effects are good. Then we have the Demon God package. We are running this. Yes. This is very broken Demon Realm strategy that's played in probably any deck that has Demon Realm as its leader. You're going to play this combination in. But there's a card in their Z deck allows us to play this for 1. It's 20k. With crit, you warp something on board, then you can swap into this to draw a card, and then you have 2 more 15k swings. And then if they have a Unison with 4 more markers in play, you can force them to warp 2 battle cards, and you gain control over it if they don't. Another reason for this card being good is that if Unisons start to become a thing again, if you gain control over their Unison, you can Spirit Boost, and then give any of your Demon Realm or Demon God cards 10k in Double Strike. This includes your leader. on any of the battle cards in this deck that are Demon Realm Race. Okay. 4 Vegeta super combos. You can run the Toas, which is the archetype one, but since we don't run any searchers for Demon Realms, it's almost no point. This is just the better super combo to run. 2 Supreme Kai. We have a lot of defenses in this deck. Being able to get 3 cards in the warp is pretty quickly. So it's just a 1-drop, stops 2 attacks, essentially. 3 of the new Dark King, and then 2 of the older Dark King power restored. So obviously we've already gone over this guy, so we're not going to go over him again. But this is a 30k double striker. You can play it for 4. And then warp your entire opponent's board, and then you get 2 battle cards from their warp that are 7 or less with different names. You can play them with their skills negated. Then you can't play non-black battle cards for the turn, but it's still a very good card. This you're going to essentially play this card off of the Ruler of the Demon Realm, because it costs 3 to play it instead of 4. You probably will never play this card off of that, but you can if you have it in the drop area. But you want to play this card from your hand since it costs 2. Just makes more sense. But if you remember, the Z Leader restands an 8 cost that with 30k power, so you can actually, if you play this off of the 3-drop or off of the 1-drop for 3 energy, you'll get barrier, so it'll be a double striker barrier, and then you can restand it with your Z Leader and then swing it again. So very powerful. And then we have the secret rare, which would probably not be the secret rare some people would play in the deck, but Dark King Mechikbura, Last Judgment. So you need to play this card. For every card in your opponent's Z deck, place up to 1 battle card from your drop or warp onto this card, and this card cannot be removed from the battle area by your opponent's skills for the turn. Additionally, if the battle card to be played has an energy cost of 7 or less, it's sent to the owner's warp instead. So this all takes place in the counter window before the card's played. Permanent if the total number of cards in you and your opponent's warp is 7 or more, reducing the cost of this card in your hand by 7. So then it becomes a 1 cost. And it's got a 40k dual attack tagline, as well as place 1 card under this in your drop. When this card or your opponent attacks, choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards and send it to the warp. So there's a lot going on with this card, right? So we'll start with the fact that this is a floodgate. It's essentially a floodgate stopper, and it is a floodgate in its own right. So if you play against a deck that uses a lot of floodgate effects, you can use this to counterplay that, send it to the warp, and I have a 40k battle card on board that can swing twice, right? Second part is that if you are playing this defensively, you can use it as a floodgate in a sense if they have a ton of battle cards on board, because this card can't be removed for the turn, and then every time they attack, you just can warp something. So as long as that card doesn't have barrier or an effect that says it can't be removed from the battle area, which there's a few of them in the game, not a ton, this card is going to be able to remove that. So you're going to be able to stop multiple attacks and like aggro decks and things. That's pretty difficult to deal with. So this card can cost 1 pretty quickly. You just need 7 between you and your opponent, which you're not going to be really overwhelming at all in this deck, or you shouldn't really overwhelm a lot in this deck if at all. But other decks, you're going to be able to get a lot of cards in the warp. Definitely, probably by turn 3, turn 4, which is normal secret rare turns for a lot of decks, you're going to be able to have this card activated. So there's a lot of other options you can play. You can play things like Evil Saiyan. You can play things like Pan. You can play the new Cumber Secret Rare. Like, there's a lot of options you can play. I would advise people to really test this card out. Yeah, whatever. It had an errata. They made some quality control mistakes. Who cares? Just the card itself, though. Just the card is actually very good, and it can catch a lot of people off guard if they're not really paying attention to it. So, also, if you do have a Unison, you can give this card a 10k in double strike off of the Champ Toa, because it is a Demon Realm, so just keep that in mind. But this is the secret rare I chose to go with. If you don't want to use this card and you're just kind of against using this card because you think it's bad, for 1, you're wrong, but 2, you can always use Evil Saiyan. That's kind of the go-to for most people when they don't really... I would say a lot of people just use Evil Saiyan because it's the only one they have, or they use Evil Saiyan because they don't want to try the other black secret rares, and a lot of the other ones are good. Alright, so then we have the kind of the rest of the defensive package. So we have 2 Gohan Negates, 2 Support of the Dark Empire, 2 Petrification, 3 Darkness Judgment, and then 1 Ginyu Body Snatcher. This is just kind of the last card. I added it because it wasn't a black card at the end. So the one card probably people don't know what it is. It's Darkness Judgment. It's a 1-drop negate. Or on your opponent's turn, if they have 3 or more cards in the warp, you can activate Battle for free, where you get to bean any of your cards on your opponent's turn. So you can actually bean your leader. So it's a black bean that doesn't restand in energy, but at least gives you a 5k for the turn. Which beforehand, without the Z leader, made a lot of sense, right? Like, it's like, okay, we can at least go to 20, so that we're not losing 2 cards from hand, we're losing 1 card from hand when we're trying to defend. But with your Z leader being a 20k, and then you can Darkest Judgment on top of that, you can go to 25k without having to use like Assault from the Darkness or other cards to bean our leader, like Protect of the People. This is just a free way of doing that, and it's incredibly powerful. Or it can just be a hard negate for 1 energy. And then Ginyu Body Snatcher is an old tech. It was figured out a long time ago when we were messing around with the deck. I don't know if it was me or somebody else who kind of put it out there for the community. I don't remember. It's been a long time. Actually, main choose 1 battle card you gain control of from your opponent with 1 of your skills and place it in the owner's drop, and then play this card from your hand. The bottom effect doesn't matter because our leader's not Green Ginyu, but it's a 20k double striker. Essentially, you are playing it for free. So it does not have a limit 1. You can play as many of them as you want, as long as you have the cards to actually use it for. So both of your leader effects, your Z effect and your Awaken effect, both steal cards. The second effect of your 8-drop, both of your 8-drop Mechikbura is actually not power restored. Yeah, it doesn't. This card actually doesn't gain control over cards, but this card does. So you can tap 2 for this, swing at this twice, swing at the card you stole, and then pop the card you stole to play essentially a King Piccolo New Ruler for black, which is crazy. So this deck has a ton of, I want to say free play, but this deck has a ton of value for very, very cheap. And you can either swing very, very quickly, or you can kind of play the long game, since you have things like Demon Realm Invasion. You have your new Z leader. You have a very powerful Z deck, which we're about to go into. So the deck itself is very well equipped to deal with mostly everything in the game. And also the fact that this is one of the only decks that can remove Android 21 very quickly, the Secret Rare. Since it's a 4 or less, you can activate main, remove its skills, and then gain control over it, and then it'll get removed from the game. So pretty cool. Z deck, we have 1 of the Z leaders, of course. 1 of the new Super Saiyan 4 Son Goku's 25k double striker that can warp something. 2 Toas. This is the card you use to play out the Toa Champ cards. The both are 2 Z energy, and so is your Z leader. So you're not really Z energy is gonna be very finite. You're probably gonna use your super combos a lot, and then some of the other cards you might play on board for combos, because you don't really generate a lot of Z energy. So that's kind of one of the problems, is this deck doesn't generate a ton of Z energy. So maybe in the future we'll get something else to support that. 1 Majin Buu, 1 Final Kamehameha. So I think this is a cool card that people should start teching into black decks if you have the room in your Z deck. It's essentially a Realm of the Gods Crimson Strike that you can play on board and then just use it later on in the game for 0 energy. So if the battle card that is attacking is 6 or more, is energy cost 6 or more of yours, you can you remove this card, you place 1 Z energy in the drop, and you remove this card from the game. And you choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards and send it to the warp, and then the attacking card gets 10k. So you can play it on board early on and just let it sit there. I would say in yellow matchups, you can just put this card on board, use it as a riposte or a Vegito skill absorber. You just use the tap down. But then when you swing at something, you can remove this card and the Z energy, and then warp anything, and then give it 10k if it's 6 costs or more. So you can give both of your 8 drops, that and your Secret Rare. So it's pretty good. The bottom part, we don't place the Son Goku and Vegeta, so that part doesn't really matter. But the top part is still pretty strong for 1 energy. You get a warp and a 10k. Probably something that people haven't really got to mess around with, but if you have the ability to fit this in your deck, I'd put it in your deck, especially with yellow being dominant as a black deck. Just put this into all of your Z decks if you have the room, so then we can always just tap it down and just use it as a absorber for a robotic riposte or something. Then we have 1 Surmounting, just to help us take our life down from like 6 to 5 or from 5 to 4, so we can use your super combos. just to filter a little bit more. So that is the deck. I'll give you guys a full overview there. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, as always, like and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think of the list and of the deck, just in general. If you guys are excited about support, I know there's a lot of doomsayers out there who are being very negative of the game. I will not say the game is dying. I'm going to continue to play it. I think the game's awesome. So no negativity for me there. But I will say in October, when this box comes out, we're going to talk about it probably on the podcast, but this deck and a lot of other decks in the anniversary box got major support, and it should really switch up the game and give a lot of new energy to people who may be coming back into the game, or people who want to get into the game with maybe some of their favorite decks that got some support. So that's it for me today, guys. As always, thank you guys for the support. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to keep supporting the channel, which does help, and I will see you guys in the next video.